Space nerds!
Sorry, I don't have any VR headset to monument this occasion. But VR is coming to Star Citizen, folks. Official support. We've been trying to do it since 2014, my friends, but this guy here, not this guy, this guy here, Mr. Sylvan, member at CIG, he's been working on this in his spare time for years, well, a little while. And we're going to talk today about kind of where this came from, because I think virtual reality is a little unexpected from a lot of folks, why it's happening, per Chris Roberts 10 years ago, what people are saying about it. I'm going to give you some actual looks at how it's performing, and also a lot of the discussion that devs have been making over the years as they've been building this out. So let's start from the very beginning, which is this is not like a lot of folks are coming into these comments and things and saying, hey, this is why are they working on virtual reality when they don't even have an inventory? Why are they getting extra things that only 1% of the player base uses when, you know, nobody else is going to really benefit from this? And I can tell you with a shadow of a doubt, without any doubt, the reason this has come around is because one employee, as I mentioned, Sylvan, has been working on this Saturdays and Sundays almost every week since September of last year. He's been doing this in his spare time. This has not been CIG. This is not backer dollars that have gone into this. I mean, probably a little bit, you know, it has to be implemented. But in terms of the chunk, the meat of the development of this, it seems this has mostly been a background project by somebody who I can attest to is very passionate about virtual reality and just about allowing people to experience this game in a separate way. This is part of why I think a lot of people are into Star Citizen. It's not just folks trying to make a buck or make a game that they think people will play. There are a lot of passionate devs working at CIG who want to see certain parts of this game flourish, and we should keep that in mind. You know, when you talk about CIG, it's not necessarily a monolith. But anyways, enough of my soapbox. Let's get into this. So let's go back to the time. Well, actually, I'll show you the implementation first so you can just get an idea of what we're even getting into. Here's a video uploaded by Adet Sarks. I'm going to go ahead and post this link in the description so you could see the whole thing. I'm just going to give you a little look at what he experiences in this. You can hear some of his commentary about how well it works.
We finally got the official native VR for the Star Citizen. The first test will happen in the coming days. And I recorded a small sneak peek for you. Right now it looks absolutely stunning. It's completely changed. The field of view is much wider now, and the whole thing looks unbelievable. It's like the game of our dreams. And I was also surprised.
So like, I believe it looks this way because when you're looking through a VR headset, you're not seeing a full screen like we're used to. But even as somebody who does eye tracking, which I think VR has been made easier because they already did eye tracking. It's taught them how to separate views and interactions and stuff. I think I can already tell that the field of view is much wider and that you can tell the view is different from just looking on a flat screen. You don't need me to tell you that though. It looks cool.
Yes,
it reminds me, the movement reminds me of what I see from VR games for sure, like No Man's Sky.
Steadily at around 50-80 FPS on maximum graphics.
The hardest part, I think, is going to be doing the keybinds on whatever controller you're playing with while your head's blocked. I'm going to jump forward a little bit here. So it's very much like, it looks a lot like the eye tracking, but man, it must be so much more immersive having the rest of your view cut off from the outside world. See how it acts in third person. So it works kind of like the eye tracker when you're in third person too. Ooh. Not as easy to watch if you're not the person controlling the headset. But to be honest, this looks smoother than I would have thought a first iteration is. Now, I have received word that by the time this video goes out, they may have the official announcement out, but they are preparing an official announcement They're going to have support for key bindings. They'll be able to tell you everything that you need to know if you do want to take part in this. I'm still, this is my first look at it, really. I'm right there with you guys. So we'll see how this develops over the next couple weeks and months, and I'll keep you covered. Floating screens for menus and the view. I am not a VR player. To be quite honest, I was waiting until this game got support for me to start jumping into VR. So I get to finally start learning what it means, and probably also start a, a bank account to add savings for this kind of thing, because these things get expensive. The bits of jankiness, honestly, I don't know if it's the game or if it's the recording, but this sort of like stuttery bit that he's seeing doesn't look like the game so much to me. It could be. Ultimately, though, you can see that it's working, and I think that's the most important thing. Is like, this has been something people have been wanting for a long time. In fact, here's a picture somebody asked about this to Chris Roberts almost 10 years ago to the day.
Okay, next question comes from Admiral Shemen. I think that's how it's pronounced. I wondered.
For the record, if you don't know what this is his letter from the chairman. This is the CEO of the company making Star Citizen. He would kind of just go on camera and listen to questions from backers and tell them, honestly, a lot of what they wanted to hear. And this is where a lot of the feature creep in Star Citizen came from. A lot of the ideas of like, oh, these things are promised, these things are happening, these things will happen. And then maybe they don't turn up or they get, toned down. But here's yet another question about something amazing that people wanted to happen. Nobody really knew how long it would take, but now here we are 10 years later, knowing it was about 10 years.
Virtual reality is coming forth now that CryEngine has native support for Oculus Rift. Any progress or plans on this topic? So we're, there is some enhanced CryEngine support, and actually one of the key people that was working on that at Crytek is now actually part of our team in Frankfurt. And we're just sort of waiting.
I'm going to get to the interesting part of this answer for you.
Updates they've got for virtual reality in CryEngine and put it in. We still want to do some specific custom stuff on our side, and that's really a matter of sort of engineering time. We're also waiting for some stuff to sort of settle. I mean, there's some pretty cool new stuff like the Valve headset as well. I'm
sorry, wait, is this from 10 years ago or this year? The timing is crazy on that. The Valve headset's coming out in like 3 months.
It's sort of on our longer term roadmap, but right now we're really focused
Very long term.
on getting all the large world and the zone system working. The Arena Commander 2.0 is really, which is a multi-crew, and then sort of after that's where we sort of get back onto
dude, this is wild.
Some other stuff.
This is before we even knew we were going to be landing on planets. Crazy trip in the past. So that's Chris talking about VR back then. Clearly it's not something that they just wanted to get in. And then here's Sylvan, as I said, responding to somebody from 4 years ago, basically saying that unfortunately we don't have the resources for VR. We got all hands on deck on PES, which turned into server meshing after PES was figured out. Once we have Vulkan, I will add a bare bones VR implementation as soon as possible. And can we if as soon as possible could be brought to the extreme, dude. VR, the freaking Vulkan API multi-threading isn't even in live yet, and they're out here pushing the VR workup, and they've got an official announcement coming out for it. So this is moving forward. If you have a VR headset, you're going to be able to play Star Citizen in VR after 4.5, and it might not be the best, but when is Star Citizen ever? Okay, this is a little bit out of left field because I did lose this, but I found it a little bit later. This is actually Sylvan specifically saying that Vulkan and Gen 12 were going to help to enable VR. So let's say as of at least October 27th, 2022, he was pretty much on the record saying they were going to get this done. And I'm happy to see it by this point.
The end goal of Gen 12, however, is to make use of a new graphics API called Vulkan, which will boost performance even more and also allows us to add new cool features like AI scaling, ray tracing, efficient multi-view rendering for VR, and Linux support, and more.
All those things are starting to come around, but thank you, Gen 12. Thank you, Vulkan. Thanks, Sylvan and the team. Here are some more shots you can see. Just in general, you can tell that it's like a VR orientation. Like I can tell this doesn't come straight from a flat screen. In fact, It looks like this is the HUD. So like your field of view is absolutely massive compared to your HUD. Look, this is where your like all your tips are. Your map is up here. So you have just like an absolutely gigantic field of view, I guess. Makes sense. He said, in VR, you have depth, perspective, and sense of scale. It's awesome. All the buttons, sliders, switches, screens, text are greatly detailed, high resolution, fully realistic on my index. In FPS mode, the weapon is fully detailed, easy to handle, and I don't get nausea, which is a surprise. Mobi-Glass is really good. The map can fully be used. Mission text is readable, easy to interact with. Flying in third-person mode is beautiful. You can look around in every direction while flying behind your ship. In this ship, it's also great. Cockpit's fully detailed. Unfortunately, the navigation markers are closer to you than your crosshair, which is a bit disturbing, but still usable. The big showstopper, though, is the inventory, which is not working. I can't see anything when pressing I. VPN. You know, I bet you the old inventory doesn't even work with this. I think that they still... I think that maybe we'll see inventory in a tech preview soon. But I don't know. Who knows? FPS is not that high, but not disturbing. Sometimes stuttering and crash the desktop is frequent. I'm not using Vulkan. In total, it's a great surprise for Christmas, he says. It forecasts how this will look like when ready, and it will be awesome. I can hardly wait. I can hardly wait either. This was what I thought was going to be the pinnacle of experiencing Star Citizen. And I thought it would probably be more of a 1.0 thing. I'm glad this is here already. I don't have a VR headset. I don't plan on having one anytime soon. But I love that this is here for those who do, and I think it's going to help in the future when the rest of us can finally pick one up. Thank you, Radical Hun, for your input. Sonaris also has some input here on Reddit. Said he spent some time flying around in the PTU in VR. He's a longtime VR enthusiast with around 4,000 hours in DCS, MF, Microsoft Flight Simulator, and iRacing. His PC hardware is high-end, 7800 X3D, 5090, 64 gigs of RAM, and he's got the Valve Index, which is definitely dated now. Star Citizen is running on the PTU with Vulkan, all settings maxed. Okay, so he says it confirms, or he confirms it shines. He said it's hard to explain how dramatically different the sense of depth is compared to a flat display. I've heard this said with Elite Dangerous. I've heard that Elite Dangerous from regular computer to VR is one of the craziest sense of scale increases you'll ever get. I hope we could get that. I hope that hits with Star Citizen. If everything involving the ship just feels right, he said, looking around the cockpit, examining the controls, watching the ship exterior as you maneuver, and observing objects flying past you. The amount of detail CIG has put into ships and cockpits is really elevated to a new level in VR. Also something I heard about in ED, that you could just see more detail. And it's nice. It's like the game is almost built to fit in a VR-like environment, being so high fidelity and just like fun to look at, with the interactions and the physicality of everything. I don't want to say they built it all with the plan of VR, but I definitely think that it was a consideration. Now, the meh he mentions here is that FPS mode is not great. On-foot VR has never been something he personally cared about, so it is not a major drawback. He just prefers switching back to the monitor once he leaves the cockpit. Okay. He tested FPS mode with mouse and keyboard. It is usable and perfectly fine for basic navigation, assuming you're not someone who gets motion sickness from smooth locomotion. But as far as actual FPS combat goes, aiming is far harder than on a normal monitor. Interesting. The good news is switching between VR and monitor can be done without exiting the game. Okay. And then he named some of the problems. Targeting HUD elements sit far too close to the eyes. Some text is extremely hard to read. Mobi-Glass appears at the same uncomfortable distance and causes eye strain. That dang Mobi-Glass. There is no automatic toggle between monitor mode and VR when entering or exiting ships, so manual console commands are required every time. Oh yeah. Definitely need a quick control for that. This is actually one more comment that he left back 5 years ago. Sylvan said, junior engineer programmer here. One of the main reasons I joined the company is to bring VR to Star Citizen, and there are also other people here in the company as dedicated about it as me. Implementing VR into the rendering itself isn't a big deal, but as others have pointed out, it's having support from the game itself in terms of gameplay. I'm mostly concerned about tying it into animation systems and what locomotion we can offer. Nobody wants to have teleporting players in the verse, right? This is key. I think this is a lot bigger deal than people would give credit for. Having a VR enthusiast tied into VR, working on it in the game, and being able to understand what problems might pop up, it's all about having that knowledge. And I think we should be pretty grateful that people like Sylvan and others in the company not only have that knowledge, want to apply it to Star Citizen, but are willing to take their spare time. He did say here that like he's going to take his spare time to do it. They're willing to take their spare time to make this happen for the love of the game. He said there are lots of unknown questions which need to be solved and requires a collaboration from various teams here. I imagine we will implement VR in stages. For a first step, just being able to view your ship in the hangar or use it in a cockpit. But a full VR implementation, similar to Half-Life Alyx, is a whole different story. I think they skipped over that a little bit. I can't and won't make any promises, but my personal goal is to have something similar to Alyx, but with a visible full body and IK, inverse kinematics. I was never a fan of just seeing your hands in VR. Apart from that, if we get a nerve gear in 2 years, I will be the first one to implement that straight away. Something like SAO is my full dream. Oh my god. Anyway, I just wanted to say that there are people here at CIG who are huge VR enthusiasts. We will do anything within our capabilities to bring it to Star Citizen. It'll be a huge task. It'll take a while, but have no doubt we will get there. Honestly, shout out to all of the VR enthusiasts out there. Chauncey Sanchez is a YouTube VR enthusiast. You should check him out if you're looking for somebody who will probably have more content on this, but just everybody who's been passionate about this. So overall, to be quite honest, the first implementation to me sounds better than I would have expected. And I think for a lot of Star Citizen fans, probably kind of similar expectations. We've seen how engineering has come into the game. We've seen how things like freight elevators, the cargo refactor, even PES and server meshing have come into the game. Big pieces of tech are destabilizing. Luckily, as people have pointed out in comments, this is not something that will touch everyone. So there's a good chance this doesn't actually destabilize the game, but it could take a little while to get perfect. So if you do have a VR headset, jump in, give it a try with the new update. But, you know, expect Star Citizen. Either way, this has gone on much longer than I expected it to. I hope you got some news from this. And if you have VR excitement, I hope it's got y'all warm and knocked in the bothered parts. Y'all have a great day. I appreciate you. Hope you got your space nerd news today. And I'll catch you in the next one.